we will go ahead and get started in the interest of time. I'm going to record this this webinar, and this webinar is kind of half presentation and half Q&A session. So it's just an opportunity for Kevin Naranjo, the U.S. Forest Service Southern Region Wood Innovations Coordinator, to just get an opportunity for him to tell you a little bit more about the grant and what is written in the RFP, and then to answer any kind of questions that might come up. So I'll let him introduce himself further, and we'll go through the Q&A session. If you have any questions as we go, please put them in the chat box, and then after he finishes the presentation, I can unmute everybody, or we can continue with the chat box for further questions. But feel free to put any kind of question in at any time as it comes up. So Kevin, you can take it from here.
All right, thanks. Thank you, Leslie. All right, good afternoon, everybody. Again, I'm Kevin Naranjo, and I am the Wood Innovations Coordinator for Region 9. So I'm responsible for managing the wood innovation grants here in the region. So, I have 12 slides. I'm going to add to what I've written on the slides, and you'll be able to. But hopefully, when I'm done, you'll have some idea of what the Wood Innovation Grant is and what we're looking for in the grant. That's probably the most important. Would be the most important takeaway. What are we looking for, and I guess what makes a good grant proposal. So the Wood Innovation Grants, typically those grants can be as much as $250,000. We have some that go for less. You are required to have a match, a 50% match. Now that match can be an in-kind match. It can be if you have partners on the grant and they're providing their services. That doesn't necessarily have to be a physical dollar. It can be their time. That does count as a match for the grant. A grant period is generally up to 3 years. We don't like to go beyond 3 years. And certainly, if you think you can finish your work in less, that's okay. This year in FY20, there'll be a total of $8 million available for the Wood Innovation Grants. That's been fairly consistent over the last several years. And I will say in last year in FY19, we had a total of 11 grants awarded to Region 8, the Southern Region, the 13 states that make up the Forest Service Southern Region. And that was about $2.6 million. So there were quite a few grants awarded. And as I go through this, I'll kind of discuss some of the grants that we have, or some of the other slides. So the purpose of this grant, this grant is funded it's actually funded through fire money. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to use the grant to expand and accelerate wood products and wood energy markets. So wood product markets and wood energy products in the U.S. And that's to support forest management needs. That's both on National Forest Service lands, but on other forested lands too. Because in the South, I think roughly 90% of the forested lands in the South are on private lands. So it can support forest, wood product markets that are taking wood off of private land. And who can apply for this grant? So pretty much anybody but the federal government can apply for the grant. State, local, tribal governments, for-profit entities. So a business that is, can show that they're going to be able to either use something that promotes more wood. The bottom line that we want to get out of these grants is to get wood off the ground, right? That which ideally helps make for a healthier forest system. So for-profit entities, school districts. I haven't seen it here in the southern region, but in other regions, we've seen school districts, communities do a lot of wood energy grants. Maybe if they're in the market for updating their boiler system, their heating system, they can use the grant to look at burning with wood. And really, I think natural gas drives where that may or may not occur. In the Northeast, we see a lot of opportunities because they're using fuel oil, which can be very expensive. There are places, and I know in the southern region, particularly along the Appalachian regions, that don't have easy access to fuel oil. So maybe that's a consideration that the grant can be able to support that. Nonprofits can certainly utilize the grant, institutions of higher education, and the special purpose districts. So if it's a public utility, a fire district, a conservation district, they're eligible to apply for the grant. So the goals of this grant, what it is, we want to be able to fund people, to be able to, do something that kind of promotes wood, but we need to kind of get something back out of it. And the primary purpose is to reduce hazardous fuels and improve forest health. And again, that's on National Forest Service lands, but also all forested lands. And in the South, that's an important distinction because, again, the primary forested lands are on private lands. And then it's to reduce the cost of forest management. So it might make you more efficient in how you're managing your different forests. And then promote economic and environmental health of communities. So those are the three fundamental goals of the grant. And so I just will put out a tidbit. So when you're writing your narrative, you want to be cognizant of these three things and kind of make sure that what you're doing, what your project is, what your grant project, that it's somehow it's tying back to either one or all three of these of the goals that we want to meet. Just somehow it has to be, you got to be able to kind of show us that it supports that. Intent and examples of the grant. So the primary intent of this grant is we want to stimulate and expand and support wood products markets or wood energy markets. I mean that's what we're trying to achieve. And some of the different projects that people propose, that would kind of be the example. So if you're looking at let's say a mass timber, a building that's utilizing mass timber, the grant can be used to support the engineering, architectural costs, design costs. It can be used to do cost analysis. It can also be used for working with the building permitting agencies. Any sort of mass timber design can be, particularly for building code officials, it's new, and that can add a lot of time to the architect and engineer's time. So the grant can be useful in helping to supplement some additional cost. And you'll find a lot of architects and engineers are new to working, maybe with mass timber, and it can help with those costs, so they don't do a project and find they don't get any fee. So the grant can be very useful to that. And the grant doesn't occur at the starting stages. We kind of want to know that you have a real project that's going to take place. It developed manufacturing capacity and other wood infrastructure markets. We have some grants that I guess would be utilization teams. Several states have them. There are some nonprofits. I'm talking about kind of here in the South, and they're trying to find new ways to be able to utilize the wood that is being cut, and a lot of that may be working with industry, trying to help develop maybe some new ways to wood market has been changing over the last several years. In some cases, I know we don't have a large furniture has kind of no longer as big as it once was. Housing has sort of dropped. So are there new ways to be able to put existing capacity back to work, using wood, or are there new markets that are out there? We want to be able to help you be able to explore and bring that to fruition. We want to be able to show projects that potentially can show quantifiable environmental and economic benefits of using wood as a sustainable building material. So that doesn't necessarily be a mass timber building, but if you've got, it's. I think that there's a lot of entities that think that we shouldn't cut any trees and that that's bad for the environment. And I think we know, probably the people who are on this call probably know that we really need to actively manage and actively harvest trees on our forested lands in order to keep them healthy. Otherwise, we run the risk of fire and maybe insect disease. And so a project that can kind of show, maybe showcase, say, I've got to doing this wood building or this wood structure, and it's storing more greenhouse gases. By the way, it's storing carbon, and we're putting back trees on the land. So that could be a project that maybe kind of shows that. I think I talked earlier about establishing statewide wood utilization and economic teams. We have 4 of those that are active in the South. And then wood energy. We don't see a lot of those in the South, but primarily that's because natural gas is so inexpensive. But I do think there are opportunities for wood energy projects. And as I stated earlier, in other regions, we are seeing those, community buildings. Maybe there are some larger prisons or hospitals that are considering changing over their heating system, and if they are considering or going to use wood energy, the grant can support that. All right. My next, hopefully I'm not going too fast for everybody. Attributes that make for a strong grant proposal. So what we kind of want to see is, it's not just if you're applying for a grant, we want to kind of understand that you have a strong team. If you're bringing industry, you're connecting with industry partners, you're connecting with other nonprofit entities, so we want to be ensured that when you get to the end of the life of the grant, that you're going to achieve what you said that you did. Grants that can actually show that they're going to be taking wood off the land. In California, that we see more of that because the state tries to make a lot of incentives because they're having a lot of issues with wildfire disease. So if you can do a project where you can somehow step up and say, hey, we're going to be able to double how much wood we're taking off the land, however this grant is being utilized. We've done grants where people have leased a particular piece of equipment that allow them to be more efficient and more effective. And over the term of the grant, they're able to do more work on the ground. And that work would have to be in a land that is is at a high risk for fire. That's heavily overgrown, hasn't been worked in a while. Grants that support commercial building markets and other wood product markets. And again, in this region, we're seeing a lot more for mass timber, and that is that would be a kind of a commercial building product. There are some grantees that are kind of being innovative, trying to come up with some other ways to be able to use wood, develop wood products. And the last kind of what makes for a strong grant is anything that wood energy is something that the people who review the grants ultimately kind of look for, because if you can, again, that goes back to it's a bigger wood energy project. We're not looking for energy projects that maybe are for your home or something, but if you have something bigger, those are probably the best opportunities for if you for ensuring that you get a grant. Those are probably the primary things that we're hoping to see. But it's not inclusive of that list. All right, so dates. So the grant has this Wood Innovation Grant has been it was advertised in October, and I want to say October 22. And the grant proposals are due in January 15. And in the southern region, they're due by email to me by 5 p.m. Eastern time on January 15th. And that includes both the grant is the application. The application is a 5-page narrative, and then there are specific required financial forms that you have to submit with the grant. So both of those are due to me by 5 p.m. Eastern time on January 15th. And in a few minutes, I'll show you the webpage where you can find all the different information on the grant, the RFP, and there's some other useful information that the Forest Service put together. And helpful hints. I will tell you that that application, they lay out specifically. They have kind of it's a really nice little outline. They project information, and they have a series of bullets. They want to know project goals and objectives, and there's a series of bullets. I will tell you, when you finish your grant application, you want to be able to go back to the application and say, I answered all of those bullets. Yep, I addressed that bullet. It should be clear to whoever's reading my application that what my goals are, what my statement of need is. You'd be surprised. I get a lot of grants, and I'm looking at them, and it's like, well, where did you address what we were looking for? So you really want to go back and just to help yourself to go back and make sure you've addressed those. I will tell you that there's two pieces. We have the actual RFP with the instructions, and then we have an application that you fill out. And in the instruction RFP, on one of the pages, part 4, they have a application review. Tells you how we're going to grade your grant. What things will give you the most number of points, and I'll just kind of quickly go through that. It's really, you want to be able to say project goals and objectives. That's 15 points, and so you want to really look at your grant and say, yeah, I've addressed those, I think, pretty strong. Project description. We kind of really want to understand what your grant is and how it's going to tie back to the project goals that I had listed. That's very, very important. And we want to know by looking at your project description that, it's a project that is kind of it's meeting the goals and it is meeting the intent of the grant, and it's going to make a difference in being able, long term. We don't. It's going to be making a difference in the impact in getting more trees off the ground, right? Because that's kind of, in simple terms, that's what we want to do with the grant. We want to be able to do more work where it's needed, which is in terms of a forest management, is be able to do harvesting and replanting in an appropriate manner. Project impact. So. How will this project make a difference? How will it do more for the wood product market, or how will it do more for wood energy? A lot of the wood energy grants are a little more direct. If you're going to be putting in a heating system, you're going to be putting in a wood energy system. We know that you're probably going to be then buying wood from the from whomever, whether it's the forest, from a private contractor. You're going to be making probably a long-term direct impact in utilizing wood, having some place for it to go. Some of the grants that we give, like a wood utilization teams, they don't have. They have more of a indirect impact, if you will, in that they're slowly building capacity. In 3 years, you're not going to build a huge wood market capacity, but you're going to build the foundation. And to be able to, hopefully bring more work to the state, or more business that wants to utilize wood, that we want to harvest off the land. Or if it is a a timber structure, a building or some structure that utilizes wood, we know that you're going to be that you're going to you're going to be ultimately you're going to be utilizing wood that comes off our forested lands. So it's kind of that's that project impact, and then qualification of the staff, organization, and partners. So we give 15 points for that, and it's really important that you bring together a team that can help lead your grant proposal to success. We want to be able to see that from in looking at your application. And then the last helpful hint is, if you're serious about submitting a grant, I will tell you that it does pay if you have the time to try to get some feedback from me. Grant submissions, when they come to me on the 22nd, so it's not just me. There's a team here in the regional office that we look at and evaluate the grants, and then we send them forward nationally. But last year in FY19, we had 11 grants, and that was by far the largest number of grants that came out of the southern region. And not all 11, but I think about 9 of the 11. I spent time. They asked for it, and I gave serious review and feedback to the applicants to kind of help guide them. I can't tell you what to write, but I'm going to tell you if you're hitting, if you have a strong grant, if you're hitting the requirements that we're looking for. I'll let you know if I think you need to do more work in this section, or I think you need to bring something out a little stronger. I'll tell you that. I'll give you the tough love, because if I think you have a good idea, I want to help you be successful. So I will tell you, don't be afraid to reach out to me. If you reach out to me the day before they're due, you're probably not going to get good feedback. It does help. I will tell you too, it does, writing a successful grant application, it takes a little bit of time. The people who were successful, I know that they put a lot of effort into it. It's a lot of work. Okay, so all right, so the Greater Forest Service, we have a Wood Innovations homepage. So that's the web page, and that has the information for the Wood Innovation Grant. So if you go to that web page, on there there's a link that says 2020 requests for proposals, and when you click on that, you'll see the instructions. The instructions are 12 pages. It's the actual RFP and instructions. You'll see the application form, and that application form is a Word document that you'll fill out. You'll fill that in. There's a set of frequently asked questions to help you. The Forest Service did a webinar. They did an 1.5-hour webinar, and it was live on the 7th, November 7th, but it's now available on that webpage. I unfortunately haven't looked at the one yet this year. I sat in on the one last year, and I was new to this position last year, and for me it was very informative. And I'm assuming they did it the same. They had 2 speakers, somebody who received a grant for wood products and somebody who received a grant for wood energy, and they both talked about what they went through, what it took to write a successful application. It is a lot of work. So if you're truly interested, and you haven't done this before, that webinar should be of value. And then they're just some examples of projects awarded last year. So there's probably 2 projects on there, and they'll provide it'll be the project narrative. You'll see what people have submitted. So that webpage is very important. All right, so I think I'm getting close to the end here. And I went quickly, mostly because I just kind of want to give you an overview and talk about what I see as important. And I am, for the most part, I try to always make myself available. If you have questions, certainly if you say, hey, Kevin, I got to do a proposal. I want to talk to you. I'll send you back a whole series of times when I'm available, and we can just set up a time, and then, I'll gladly take whatever time you need to help you out. So that's my contact information. You can see my email address, my desk phone, and my cell phone. And I think they all work. I try to make myself available. So with that, I'm going to questions. I'm going to pop up a picture of myself so you can see me, if I can remember how to do that. All right, so because Leslie told me I had to make myself available. Whoops, that's Leslie.
Yeah,
so, Leslie, can you see me now, or do I have to do something else?
I can see you. I can see you clearly. So.
All right. All right. So.
I just want to thank Kevin for coming to talk to us. And now I'll open it up for questions. And you can type them in the chat box or in the Q&A section on Zoom. So feel free to take a look. So the first question is, I see in the past that projects have been funded that do primary research to develop new products utilizing wood that previously used petroleum-based sources. What suggestions do you have for groups planning on submitting a proposal for projects that are working to develop new materials such as these?
Well, that's a really good question, and I should have probably addressed it. So that I heard Leslie use the word primary research in there. So just to be clear, research projects, pure research projects, because this grant program is becoming more and more competitive. It's going to be tougher for research projects that end up in a paper, just a published paper. I mean, that's not the type of thing that we're looking for. We're looking for more applied research. So if you're doing research, if you're doing work with the trying to find new ways, new fuels, you probably want to make sure that you're tied into industry, and somehow you need to show that this is going to it's going to turn into something. It's going to, when the grant ends, somebody is ideally taking this and going to be able to kind of move forward with that idea. So hopefully that answers the question. Again, not pure research. We're really getting more. You're tying in with a bunch of different partners, and it really is going to show that we're going to, at the end of it, you're going to be able to have something that ideally will lead to, or is helping to get more wood off the land.
So the next question is, have there been any grants for biochar production?
Well, biochar, that's a few, but I'll be honest. I'm not sure what makes a good grant for biochar, or how. I haven't seen any. So I was on a conversation with some of my peers, and somebody's looking potentially to lease some equipment to make biochar, because I know the equipment can be very expensive. And I also know there aren't a lot of markets for biochar. It's really kind of a small thing. Biochar is something that the Forest Service is interested in, because we know it has potential. We just haven't been able to see what that potential looks like. And I use the word lease, so the grant just cannot be used to purchase any equipment, or can't be used for construction of a building, because otherwise the federal government has ownership of whatever that is. But with biochar, if you think that you have opportunity to build markets for biochar, that might be something that we're definitely interested in, because that is something we know there's potential out there. We haven't seen a lot of it, and internally it's something we're talking about. What can we do to help push that along? So hopefully that answers that question.
Okay. We have another question. Will this grant cover engineering and design costs for a wood to energy project for a hospital or other public facility?
The short answer is yes, it will. And I will tell you too, the Forest Service, we offer for free. If you have somebody that's looking at a wood energy project, we will do, unless you're an engineering company and don't want us to cut in, we will do the cost analysis. We'll help somebody out and do the cost benefit analysis of whether or not it's worthwhile to go to wood, or you know what, you need to just stick with, if you're going to put in a new system, you're better off with natural gas. We will do that part for free. We won't do the engineering and design. And I will also say on wood energy, they did it last year, and they're going to do it again this year. It's the one item that we will, the grant could be used to purchase equipment for. We figure that equipment is going to stay put and not move if you put something into a building. So the grant can be used to purchase wood energy equipment. And again, when the federal government uses grant money to purchase something, we do have ownership. We have in the past done it for mobile equipment, and that's not necessarily a good thing, because then somebody sells it to someone else and they don't realize the government has, we have a stake in that. So yeah, it can be used for the engineering, and we will do we do cost analysis to determine whether or not it's worth your while to change over.
So I have another question here. One of the key attributes you highlighted had to do with wood from forests with high wildfire risk. Would this also apply to forests with high hurricane risk?
Yeah, because hurricanes are a big problem. Well, yeah, sure. I mean, we want to create healthy forests, right? We don't quite see it as much in the South as we do in the West. It's a big problem. The Forest Service, we have to do oftentimes, as administrations change, sometimes how we manage the forest can drastically change. In the past, we suppressed wildfires. We didn't do as much forest management, and we created unhealthy forest systems. In the South, we realized that it's truly important that we some of that has occurred on national forest lands in the South as well, but private forest landowners, there's not a lot of markets for some of their wood, and I'm certain in hurricane areas, if the forests are overgrown or they haven't been properly managed, generally I know that disasters of that nature can oftentimes have a greater effect on the lands. So probably the answer is yes.
Okay.
And again, if you're serious about a grant, all these different questions, you certainly are. Again, it's probably best not just to call me. It's better to, hey, I want to talk about my idea, and I will make time for you. We can set a time.
We get some other questions. You're probably aware that the RFS program does not allow the use of wood from federal grants to produce RFS qualifying renewable fuels. So RFS being renewable fuel standards. This certainly seems to be opposite from one of the goals we are trying to achieve. Any thoughts on how we can get federal lands included under the renewable fuel standards? Changes to the renewable fuel standard programs such as this would require congressional approval.
Well, I don't know the answer to that question. So, but I tell you what, I'll you have that question, right, Leslie? So I'll ask, and whomever asked it,
okay.
I'll get back a response.
Okay. And that's
I just be making something up.
Well, that's SB Dumpfee. So feel free to put your email in the chat box, and he can get your response. We have another question. Can you talk a little bit about the match fund requirement for this grant? What percentage and what can be counted as the matching fund?
So if you get a $250,000 grant, you have to come up with 50%. So whatever 50% is, I don't know, 125. So that matching can be physical dollars. So we've got $100,000, but we also have a partner who's going to furnish their work for free. The engineer that's going to design the wood energy system for us from the other question, he's going to he's going to give enough of his time that equals $25,000. So it can be an in-kind. It can be other partners. And we do get a lot of grants that have in-kind support, particularly around statewide energy teams or statewide utilization teams, right? Because that grant, you should have a lot of partners. You may have, some nonprofits that see this as a valuable idea, and maybe they're going to give in-kind time. So it's their time. So there really is a dollar because they're paying somebody. But I just need to know then, they're going to provide, 40 hours of work, and for them it comes out to $15,000. So that can be part of the match. You can't use other federal dollars to match. So if you have a grant from another federal resource, that can't be used as a match. But that doesn't mean, if you're using a state partner, and although you have to be careful that the state funding, if it didn't come through the federal funding, so you can use that as well. So hopefully that answers the question.
Mm-hmm.
But and so if you have one more to that, I mean, I have some partners some people that have, we got to get the $250,000 grant, and so they tell me they got $2 million in matching. They got all these people. I just need to know you have 125,000. And then when in your proposal, you're going to tell me how you're spending the money. They have kind of I'm spending a certain amount on contracting. I'm spending a certain amount on travel. I'm spending a certain amount on salaries. There may be some indirect cost. I mean, so over the life of the grant, both the force federal and the match, that 25, that 50%, you kind of have to spend. You have to spend how you're telling us. If you decide to do it differently, I have to know about that. It doesn't mean we're not going to let you. I just got to know about it and do an amendment.
All right, I'm going to move on to the next one. Can this grant be used by logging contractors to help acquire new equipment? This is in an area, Arizona, that is in need of loggers and truckers to remove the material off of the U.S. Forest Service lands. I believe that you said that it cannot be used for equipment. Is that correct? How about sawmill equipment or installing the equipment?
It cannot be used to purchase new equipment. So you cannot buy everything you just mentioned. You cannot buy it. We have done that in the past, and it's just created. You don't really want it because we own part of it, and if you ever try to sell it, it creates problems. Now I can tell you in California, there have been because they're again the utility company. Before they got into trouble, the state had allowed for smaller companies to be able to, at a reduced rate, provide their energy to the grid system, and that was burning wood, right? So they were getting wood off of lands that, whether that was state lands or National Forest Service lands, but in order to increase the amount of wood they were taking off, they leased equipment. One company leased, I know, some trucking. Another company, I don't know if it was a feller buncher, but something so they'd be able to cut more wood during that time frame and be able to get more of those hazardous fuels. So I tell you that for a project like that question, you're going to have to show me the area that you're going to do that work is got hazardous fuels. That one probably really have to hit the hazardous fuels. As far as leasing equipment for a sawmill, I mean, again, it'd have to be leased. You can't buy it. So you're not going to be looking for something you're going to put permanently. Definitively has to be leased. And you really would probably have to show me a strong connection to an area that is getting rid of area that has high hazard. It hasn't been managed in a long time. It hasn't had proper management.
And Kevin, I'm going to follow up with that, but I was just thinking, if they buy this equipment from other funds, can that be used as a match if they buy the equipment for the grant?
No, that probably wouldn't be buying the equipment like that. I guess I don't know that. I don't know that answer.
Uh-huh.
I'm not really sure.
Okay.
I don't know if that would because if they bought a, you know, with something, it would probably be a lot of money. I don't know how that could then lead to whatever project they're doing to be able to hit our
Okay.
goals. I can't
It just popped
envision.
in my head. Okay.
No more questions from you, Leslie.
That's fine. So the next question is, what about funding an RLF? And I actually don't know what an RLF is.
Yeah, I'm not sure either.
Can the CSF user kind of clarify that? All right, we'll return to it. But if you want to chat, CSFS user, just type in the chat board what an RLF is, and we'll come back to your question. So another question about, can the grant be used for trails or roads in order to access the forest for logging, agroforestry, or fire prevention?
You have to really show me how it's going to increase. You know, it's going to really lead to you getting more wood off the ground. I mean, because that really, in simplistic terms, we have all those goals and everything, but the bottom line is, you know, we're the whole reason we want to stimulate wood markets or wood energy markets is we want to find places for the wood to go, and that leads back to we want to be able to harvest more wood where we need to cut more wood where we need to. So if you were to use it for the trails or the roads going in there, I mean, your project would really have to, again, that's probably going to be a project you're going to have to show me. It's an area that's high hazard fuels, and it really is going to make it. It's going to be the difference maker in us getting, you know, cutting wood, and you know, and it's going to increase the volume from A to B. That probably would be what you'd have to show. Okay. So it's not necessarily a no, but I think that might be a hard sell.
I'm going to go back to the other question. So it's a revolving loan fund. So they say, what about funding a revolving loan fund that provides financing for forest product entities to increase their capacity to harvest and manufacture wood products?
You know what? I think the answer to that is probably no. So that would actually interesting. That came up on our. There's one of us in each region. We did our coordinators call this morning. So we wouldn't give you the grant funds so that you could then loan that to other people. That's not what this grant does. I mean, that'd be a different USDA entity, I think. If that's what the question is, you couldn't take that money and then lend that out.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So let's see. I think this is the last question. The title of this program, the grant program, is Wood Innovation. Do you see grant opportunities for a highly innovative project having extensive public exposure and educational value, even if the actual volume of wood consumed or transformed by the project is relatively small?
Well, maybe because I'll go to who. So last grant, and so education is really important. Depends on what you're trying to educate around. And I worked pretty hard with the person. In the end, I think what they wanted to do, they didn't quite meet the requirements of the grant. But education, you know, there's a lot of misinformation with the public about, you know, if we cut any trees, right, where it's bad. And that's not, you know, sometimes I think the general public understands that. I think that's larger conservation groups that have something they're looking for are generally more inclined to think that, and then therefore they have a larger influence on other people. So, so as an example, wood pellets, there's a lot of negative activity around wood pellets, but you know, the people who manage their lands to be harvested for wood pellets, they're just, you know, they're not going through and cutting 50,000 acres at one time. They're cutting sections, and then, you know, they're replanting, right? And we know that burning wood is less. It produces. It's not as, certainly not as harsh as a fossil fuel to the air. I mean, certainly it has some negative, but what the alternative would be burning coal or natural gas as opposed to wood. Wood is probably better. So the education, depending on what it is you're doing, there is some potential if it's around something that can really help an industry that's getting a lot of negativity and really help relay that and I think convey that to the public. So the entity that I was looking at last year, why I like theirs is they actually have a lot of public come through where they they do a lot of education for the public, and they get people from all over the United States come through, and I liked it because they were going to be able to reach a broad audience, but their application just didn't convey strong enough how well they were going to do that. So you really would have to write a good application, but the answer is yeah. Well, the short answer is yes, that it could be a potential if it's written about the right thing.
We have another question here that says, if a Forest Service unit is a partner in a proposal, could they receive support through a sub-award or some other mechanism?
You can't have a Forest Service unit be a direct partner. Certainly you want to involve a forest if you're doing all the wood innovation teams that we have on the state. The Forest Service is not you in your proposal, you're not going to identify them as a partner. But definitely you want them to be involved. Other funds, again, you can't use any other federal funds. Well, let me backtrack. So you can't use federal funds for your match, but if you're doing other work that supports the grant, that potentially is okay. You know what? I don't want to say that. I could be wrong. As for the moment, you can't use any other federal funds. You can't use them for the match, and you don't want the Forest Service to be a partner, but you certainly want them to be involved. State forestry can be a partner, and you want state forestry if you're doing something on state lands, and you certainly want letters of support from the Forest Service if you're going to be affecting anything with Forest Service lands or state lands. You want letters from both state forestry and national forest. So I tell you, when you're doing your applications, you definitely want anybody who's listed as a partner, you want letters of support and how they're going to be engaged, and the application tells you that. But you definitely want, I get applications that haven't talked to either state forestry or national forest system lands. I mean, the bottom line is we're trying to do better management of the trees on the ground. One of the two should know about what you're doing. And certainly say, yeah, this is going to be good for the landscape here, if that makes sense.
Cool.
These are all good questions. I mean, I have a lot of stuff to think about, and these questions, I will tell you again, it's not easy to write a strong grant. People leave out some of these questions. When I'm reading a proposal, these are things that are running through my brain. You didn't address this at all, so those are good questions.
And that's actually the last question. Are there any? Oh wait, I think there's. Let's see. I think there's just a comment about the tree huggers not connecting the dots that their toilet paper comes from tree biomass.
We won't discuss that one.
Yeah. So
everybody has an opinion.
Okay. Are there any last questions? Okay. I don't see any raised hands or anything. So I just want to thank Kevin for coming to talk to us. And his email is it's Kevin. Is it Kevin.Naranjo? I'll put it in the chat box.
Yeah, and I had it for a while on the Kevin.Naranjo at USDA.gov. It was on one of my slides too.
Okay. Yeah, thanks so much, Kevin, for coming to talk to us, and thanks everybody for asking some really great questions. We will post this on Forestry Webinars as an archive version so people can access this later as well. And that's it. Thanks so much.
One last, this will be a competitive, I'm going to see some competitive grants. So if you're serious, you really need to work hard.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Thanks, Lizzie.
Thanks so much.